If you're an American currently living abroad, what is one time that made you realize that America really messed you up?
Okay, so unfortunately, I have more than one of these situations because America. But one that I know specifically that just happened to me recently, I was walking to my car. It was late at night. I was leaving the mall, and this guy was walking behind me, and I was just like, dun 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 dun. What does he want from me? And I got in my car, and when he walked past, I locked the doors. And I was just like, wait a minute, you're not in North Carolina anymore. And it's so weird because I've been so comfortable here. I've went inside of the store and left my car running because it's super hot in Abu Dhabi. And I'm like, let's leave the air going. But yeah, America has really made me scared to strangers. Which, I mean, it probably should because the world is crazy. But yeah, not in the UAE. It's just not that way.
When I was studying abroad in Japan, I got super sick one month, and my host family kept telling me to go to the doctor, and I kept refusing. And when they asked why, I said because I was scared they're going to send me to the hospital and leave me with this huge bill. And then they quickly had to explain to me that that's not how it works, and if I actually needed to go to the hospital, I would not leave with a $6,000 bill just for IV fluids and ibuprofen.
So, as an American living in New Zealand for the last 2 years, I have definitely had a moment of clarity where I realized how the American healthcare system is. So I was watching this cooking show with my boyfriend, and the girl who wanted to win, she wanted to win because she had all these medical bills she needed to pay because she was in a hit and run. So she was hit, obviously, and her legs got super up. But I was like, wait, why is she paying $80,000 in medical bills because she got hit? That makes no sense. So safe to say, I don't think I'll be moving back to the States anytime soon, especially since I broke my wrist here and it was completely free. How does that work? America, get your shit together.
So a few weeks after I moved to South Korea, I got pretty sick. I got a pretty gnarly sinus infection. So my boss insisted on taking me to the doctor, even though I was like, no, it's fine. I don't need to go. I'll get better. And she took me to the doctor, and I have health insurance here in Korea. I have the National Health Insurance Plan. And at the end of my appointment, my boss said to me, oh, it's 5,000. So I heard her say 5,000. 5,000 won is about $5. But in my head, there was no way it could have only been 5,000. So I pulled a 50,000 won note out of my wallet and I handed it to her. She tried to give it to the receptionist, and he was like, does she have anything smaller? This is a big bill. And she was like, do you have anything smaller? And I was like, but it's 50. She was like, no, it's $5,000. And I was like, how can a doctor's appointment only be $5?
When my grandfather was dying, we went to Scotland to go and see, him for one last time. And at one point, my grandfather had a prescription that needed picking up. So I pop out of the car, run into the pharmacy, and I've got my purse on me. I don't have very much money with me. I just didn't. And I went in, and I'm just like, okay, I'm here to pick up for my grandfather. This is his name. And I've got my passport out, ready to hand it to them, to prove that I'm who I say I am. And they're like, oh, yeah. How's John doing? Here you go. Here's his stuff. Hey, let him know that if he ever needs help with this, you can just call us. We'll send it on down to him. I said, thank you. And then I stood there, and they're like, why are you still here? I was like, but I need to pay. And they're like, no, you don't. He's old. Everything's free. I never felt more uncomfortable leaving a building than I did in that day. It was awful.
I'm a U.S. citizen currently living in Costa Rica. We have to be careful about the use of the word American since the Americas are continents. Anyway, I have so many examples of how the U.S. me up, specifically Florida. We got to Costa Rica the second weekend in November, obviously still deep in the throes in the US with COVID. And coming from Florida where there's so many anti-maskers and COVID deniers, it was surreal to go to these establishments here where everyone's following the Ministry of Health's rules. There's hand washing stations outside of every establishment. There are people taking your temperature to go into grocery stores and certain restaurants. People are giving you distance. Everyone is compliant with masks. And I found myself so defensively postured, ready to argue because I had gotten into so many arguments in Florida with anti-maskers and COVID deniers. It's amazing when people don't politicize a virus.
So I don't currently live abroad, but I grew up abroad, and I have so many. The first one is Common Core math. This one didn't mess me up as much when I was living abroad as much as it did when I moved back. Because believe it or not, when I was growing up, I was taught to understand the inner workings of the math. Like, I understood the math. I understood what was happening in the equations. I knew what they meant. But when I came back, the people that were getting A's on tests, like doing the best in math, had no understanding of what was actually happening in the math. I remember having like right on right answers, and I would be getting marked down because I wasn't using the Common Core math. And then when I tried to use the Common Core math, I didn't know how to do it because it was just steps, and I didn't understand what was going on in the math, and I wouldn't do well. Like, oh my god.
So I live in Paris, and 2 months ago I got hit by a taxi. Relatively hard. I fell down in the street. All these people came, they picked me up, they brought me over to a bench. Someone from a restaurant brought me a glass of water. Another woman gave me a handful of coins, and I was like, I don't need your money, it's okay. And she was like, sweetheart, this is your money. It fell out of your pockets when you got hit by the taxi. And I was like, Sonic the Hedgehog vibes, great. The man who hits me goes to call the ambulance, and I said, stop. Do not call the ambulance. That will cost me $3,000 to $5,000 because that's what an ambulance costs in America. And he was like, what are you talking about? An ambulance is €7. I was like, oh my God. Remind me to twist my ankle on my way home from the club, and they'll give me an IV so I won't be hungover the next day? Catch me at the hospital. This is lit.
I'm answering this, but kind of the opposite. I'm an American who was born abroad and then moved to America. I moved when I was 8, and I went from a really nice school to an American public school. And on the very first day, I came in with a snowsuit in one hand and a pair of slippers in my other hand. I was like, where do I put this down? They looked at me like, no, you don't need a snowsuit for class. What? We lived in Sweden, so if you were going to go to recess, there was a fair chance that you might need a snowsuit sometime. So I was embarrassed, my mom took it back, and then I heard a ding 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 above the speakers. When I tell you I was not prepared for 20 to 30 8-year-olds to stand up in unison, place their hands over their heart, and start chanting together, I don't think I can explain how weird that was. And then, nobody taught me the Pledge of Allegiance. From then on out, they just assumed I knew it. And that's just American arrogance for you.
So I live in Stockholm, Sweden, but I'm from Nashville, and I used to have the best job ever in Nashville, but I was always paranoid about getting fired for no reason, because that happened to a lot of people at my company. People get fired and no one would say why. Like, they would just drop in the group chat and be like, this person's not with us anymore, and we'd be like, okay. So when I was applying for jobs in Sweden, I would like tell the employer, I'd be like, oh, job security is really important to me because I don't want to just like show up one day and find out that I'm fired. They were like, what are you talking about? Like, that's illegal. I was like, huh? And long story short, it's like completely impossible to fire someone like in Sweden. The company has to prove that you either killed somebody or that like employing you will make them bankrupt. It's like so much work to try and fire somebody. But you can quit whenever you want, depending on your contract. But yeah, all my employers were like shocked to hear that I could get fired tomorrow and they didn't have to tell me why. Thanks, Sweden.
I chose to do this even though I'm a Canadian and we have free healthcare. But the reason I'm doing it is because everyone talks about healthcare with this stitch. And guess what? I'm in Greece. I'm in Europe. Okay, so 2015, I'm in Europe. I've got bilateral pneumonia, both lungs full. 2 months in, I'm seeing no signs it's getting better. I can't breathe. I can't even walk 10 steps. I'm out of breath. I'm like, can't do any. Finally, it's life or death. I mean, I gotta go to the hospital. I gotta bite the bullet. Whatever they're gonna charge me in Greece, I gotta pay it. So I show up at the hospital. They put me on this ventilator thing. They got my airways opened up. They did x-rays. I still got the x-rays. They did blood work. They did everything. They told me what I had. They gave me 3 different types of meds. And when I go to leave, you know how much they charge me? €5. It's about $6 American. What?
So about a year ago, I ended up going to the emergency room here in the US because I had really bad asthma and I felt like I couldn't breathe. And all they told me to do at the emergency room was to take some allergy pills. Some that I already had at home, and then they just sent me home. And it ended up being $2,000, including insurance. Back up to 2 years ago, I was in China, and I had to go to the emergency room for the exact same thing. And I was like, thank God I got the study abroad health insurance because I'm going to the emergency room right now and I'm really afraid how much it's going to be. Okay. Ended up going to the emergency room, and in the end, I paid $4 without the insurance. Didn't even need it. It was $4.